The courtroom was packed. Spectators, journalists, and legal experts filled every seat, murmuring among themselves as they anticipated what was about to unfold. A high-profile case, a controversial judge, and none other than Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida, standing at the center of it all. Pam walked in with her signature confidence, dressed in a sharp navy suit. Her reputation preceded her. She was known for being a fierce litigator, unafraid to challenge corruption at any level. Her presence alone commanded respect, but today, she wasn't just facing an ordinary legal dispute. At the bench sat Judge Ronald Galloway, a man with a reputation for judicial activism. He had a history of ruling in favor of state overreach and silencing attorneys who dared challenge his authority. This time, he was presiding over a case that could set a major precedent, a case where Bondi was defending a client against an unjust government fine. The bailiff called the courtroom to order. The tension in the air was thick. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Galloway," the bailiff announced, though some in the gallery barely concealed their skepticism at the word honorable. Judge Galloway entered, his robe flowing behind him, a smug expression on his face. He sat down, adjusting his glasses, and then scanned the room, his eyes locking onto Bondi with a flicker of disdain. From the start, it was clear. This wasn't just a trial. It was a battle. Bondi took her place at the defense table. As she glanced around, she noticed a few familiar faces, seasoned lawyers who had warned her about Galloway's antics. But she also saw reporters, cameras flashing. Good, she thought. The more eyes on this, the better. The case had gained national attention because it was about more than just one client. It was about government overreach and a judge who had allegedly been twisting the law to serve his own interests. Judge Galloway leaned forward, tapping his gavel lightly. "Let's get this circus over with," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for the microphones to catch. A few gasps and murmurs ran through the audience. Did the judge just openly insult the proceedings? Bondi remained calm, but she made a mental note. The arrogance is already showing. This will come back to haunt him. She straightened her posture, took a deep breath, and prepared for what she knew would be a long and heated fight. Pam Bondi stood tall at the defense table, her expression unreadable. She had handled high-stakes cases before, but this one carried a different weight. It wasn't just about her client. It was about exposing corruption in the judiciary. The case involved a small business owner, Mark Reynolds, who had been unfairly fined $250,000 by a government agency for an alleged zoning violation. The fine was unprecedented, arbitrary, and clearly politically motivated. Bondi had spent weeks combing through legal precedents and had found glaring inconsistencies in the judge's prior rulings. She was certain that Judge Galloway had been weaponizing the law against certain individuals, particularly those who opposed government overreach. As she arranged her notes, Judge Galloway smirked. "Miss Bondi, I assume you're ready to proceed?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Pam didn't flinch. She met his gaze directly. "I am, Your Honor." "Good," he said. "Then let's get straight to it. The state has provided overwhelming evidence that Mr. Reynolds violated the zoning laws, and I see no reason to entertain long-winded arguments." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Was he seriously trying to dismiss the defense before it even began? Pam remained calm, but internally she recognized the power play. Judge Galloway was trying to shut her down before she could expose the flaws in the prosecution's case. She cleared her throat. "With all due respect, Your Honor, we haven't even presented our argument yet. And as you are well aware, the burden of proof lies with the prosecution. Rushing to judgment before hearing the defense is a violation of due process." The judge's face twitched ever so slightly, a flicker of irritation. "Very well," he sighed, waving a dismissive hand. "Make it quick." Pam took a deep breath. "Now it begins." Pam Bondi straightened her posture, unfazed by Judge Galloway's attempt to rush the proceedings. If he thought he could intimidate her into silence, he was gravely mistaken. She walked toward the jury, her heels clicking against the polished courtroom floor. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's start with the facts." She turned toward the prosecution's table. "The state claims that Mr. Reynolds violated zoning laws. But let's examine the actual regulation in question." Pam held up a thick legal document, flipping to a highlighted section. This law states that any zoning violation must be enforced within 90 days of the alleged infraction. Yet, in this case, the state waited over a year before issuing a fine. That's already a direct violation of their own regulations. A few jury members leaned in, intrigued. The judge, however, didn't look pleased. Bondi continued, her voice steady. Furthermore, I have records showing that multiple businesses in the same area committed similar zoning infractions, but they weren't fined $1. Yet my client, Mr. Reynolds, was hit with a $250,000 penalty. She placed a stack of documents on the defense table. These are public records. They show that the businesses which were overlooked all share one thing in common. They donated to a certain political campaign. The courtroom fell dead silent. Pam turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I submit that this case isn't about zoning at all. It's about punishing an innocent man for not playing political games. Judge Galloway's face hardened. This is not a political matter, Miss Bondi, he snapped. And I will not tolerate grandstanding in my courtroom. Pam remained calm, but her eyes locked onto his. With all due respect, Your Honor, I'm simply presenting the facts. If those facts are inconvenient, that's not my problem. It's the court's duty to uphold justice. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Pam knew she had just put the judge in a corner. But this was only the beginning. Judge Galloway's grip on his gavel tightened. His face, already tense, turned a shade darker. The courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs. Everyone could feel it. Pam Bondi had backed the judge into a legal corner, and he didn't like it one bit. With a deep breath, he leaned forward, his voice dripping with restrained anger. Miss Bondi, he said, his tone sharp, you are dangerously close to contempt. Pam raised an eyebrow. Contempt? For citing case law. You are questioning this court's integrity. No, Your Honor, Pam interrupted, her tone unwavering. I'm questioning the fairness of this case. If you want to hold me in contempt for doing my job, then go right ahead. The tension in the room spiked. A smug grin crept onto the prosecutor's face, sensing an opportunity. Your Honor, he chimed in, perhaps a fine would remind the defense to respect these proceedings. Judge Galloway nodded curtly. Miss Bondi, for your clear disrespect, I'm imposing a $5,000 fine, payable immediately. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Finding an attorney on the spot? Unheard of. But Pam didn't flinch. Instead, she slowly crossed her arms and let out a small chuckle. Your Honor, with all due respect, that fine is illegal. The judge's eyes twitched. Excuse me? Pam took a step forward. Under U.S. legal precedent, an attorney cannot be summarily fined for courtroom conduct unless they have been given due process, which includes the right to a hearing. Do you intend to bypass my constitutional rights in your own courtroom? The judge's jaw clenched. He had no legal response. The prosecutor's smug look vanished. The jury, the gallery, everyone was watching. Pam continued, her voice razor sharp. And let's be clear. If you proceed with this fine, I will personally take this case to the state's Judicial Review Board for abuse of power. A heavy silence fell over the room. The judge had made his move, and now he was trapped. Would he back down? Or would his ego push him into an even bigger mistake? Judge Galloway's grip on his gavel tightened to the point of trembling. His authority, his entire reputation, was being dismantled in real time. Pam Bondi stood firm, unwavering. She wasn't intimidated. The silence in the courtroom was thick, but beneath it, whispers began to rise. This is crazy. Can he even do that? She's right. This doesn't seem legal. Is she actually going to take him down? Judge Galloway knew he had two choices. Back down and admit he overstepped his authority. Double down and risk making the situation even worse. His pride chose the latter. You are out of line, Miss Bondi, he snapped, his voice cracking slightly. I am the authority in this courtroom, and I will not tolerate your blatant disrespect. Pam tilted her head. Authority? Or unchecked power? A murmur rippled through the spectators. The prosecutor, now visibly uncomfortable, shifted in his seat. He had wanted Pam silenced, not a full-blown scandal. Judge Galloway slammed his gavel. I will be heard. Pam remained calm. And so will I. The Constitution guarantees that. The judge's nostrils flared. His face flushed a deeper shade of red. Then, in a moment that stunned the entire courtroom, he made the biggest mistake of his career. Miss Bondi, he growled, I'm holding you in contempt of court. Bailiff, remove her. Gasps erupted from the gallery. Pam's legal team shot to their feet. The bailiff hesitated. His training told him something felt off. Pam Bondi, however, didn't even blink. She slowly leaned forward and said, "Judge Galloway, you just violated federal law." Silence. The judge's eyes darted across the room. He suddenly felt like a caged animal. Pam pulled out a document and placed it on the defense table. According to Section 401 of the U.S. Code, a judge cannot summarily hold an attorney in contempt without due process. You just issued an illegal order in front of a full courtroom. Judge Galloway's breath hitched. He realized he had just incriminated himself. And Pam wasn't finished. "Now, Your Honor," she said, her voice cool and precise, "if you don't rescind that order, I will be forced to file an immediate emergency appeal with the State Judicial Ethics Board." The judge's hand shook. Pam's words were sinking in, and so was the realization of his own undoing. But what would he do next? Would he backtrack? Or would he let his ego push him into a career-ending decision? The entire courtroom was holding its breath. Judge Galloway's face was beet red, his fingers gripping the bench like it was the only thing keeping him afloat. Pam Bondi had just called his bluff, publicly, legally, and decisively. The tension was so thick, you could almost hear the judge's heartbeat. The prosecutor glanced at the judge, then at Pam. He knew this wasn't just a legal battle anymore. This was a full-scale disaster. Pam took a step closer. "Your Honor, I'll give you one chance. Withdraw your unlawful order, or I file the appeal right now." Judge Galloway's jaw tightened. His career had been built on intimidation, control, and unchecked authority. But right now, he was losing. The bailiff, caught in the middle of the storm, hesitated. He wasn't about to put his career on the line for a judge who might be breaking the law. The judge's eyes darted around, searching for a way out. He had two choices. Back down. Admit his mistake. Save his career, at least for now. Push forward. Double down on his abuse of power, even if it meant self-destruction. Pam crossed her arms. "Tick-tock, Your Honor. What's it gonna be?" The judge's lips quivered. Then he made his choice. With an exasperated slam of his gavel, he barked, "Fine. The contempt charge is withdrawn. You can sit down." Pam Bondi didn't move. She smirked. She knew she had won. The tension in the room broke like a dam. Murmurs and whispers filled the gallery. The judge had just folded. But then, just when everyone thought it was over, Pam dropped the final hammer. She turned to the court reporter. "I'd like to officially request that today's transcript be sent directly to the State Bar Association for review." The judge's eyes bulged. His own words were about to be used against him. And this was just the beginning. Judge Galloway froze. His career, his entire reputation, was now hanging by a thread. Pam Bondi had just ensured that his misconduct wouldn't stay in that courtroom. The moment the transcript hit the State Bar Association, his name would be under scrutiny. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Spectators were already pulling out their phones, tweeting, recording reactions, whispering. This wasn't just a local courtroom scuffle anymore. This was about to become national news. The bailiff, who had stood like a statue for the last several minutes, cleared his throat and took a step back. He wanted no part in this. The prosecutor. He was already sweating. The judge's fingers curled into a fist. He wanted to lash out to regain control, but he knew the damage had been done. Pam didn't gloat. She simply turned and took her seat. The judge attempted to compose himself. He cleared his throat, adjusted his robe, and tried to act as if nothing had happened. But it was too late, because outside the courtroom, the real storm was beginning. By the time court adjourned, the story had already spread like wildfire. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed, microphones extended. The moment Pam stepped outside, she was bombarded. "Ms. Bondi, did the judge abuse his power? Are you filing a complaint against Judge Galloway? What's your next move?" Pam? She didn't rush. She turned to the cameras, gave a small, confident smile, and said, "Justice speaks for itself. Stay tuned." The clip went viral within hours. News stations picked it up. Hashtags trended. Legal analysts dissected every detail of the courtroom showdown. And then, the State Bar Association issued a statement. An investigation into Judge Galloway had officially begun. Judge Galloway sat in his office, staring at the stack of papers in front of him. His hands shook as he tried to keep his composure. He had always prided himself on being above reproach, a pillar of integrity within the legal community. But now his career was crumbling in front of his eyes. He glanced at his phone. More notifications, more messages. The investigation was gaining momentum. Pam Bondi's calm demeanor had only made his actions look worse. Desperation clawed at him. He needed to act quickly, save face before it was too late. Picking up the phone, he dialed a number he knew would answer immediately. "Sam, I need your help. This is bad. You've got to talk to the state bar, find a way to slow this down." Sam was a well-connected lawyer who had helped Judge Galloway in the past. They had worked together on several high-profile cases. "Slow down. Galloway, this is already out of your hands. You need to prepare for the worst." Sam's voice was sharp, but there was a tone of sympathy in it as well. "I'm not going down like this," Galloway snapped. "I'll have Bondi discredited. I'll find something. You'll help me, right?" Sam paused, clearly weighing the options. "You need to make a decision before it's made for you." Galloway hung up the phone. The walls were closing in, but Pam's words echoed in his mind. Justice speaks for itself. For the first time, Judge Galloway wasn't sure if justice was on his side. Back at her office, Pam Bondi sat quietly at her desk, reviewing the events from the courtroom. She wasn't surprised by the chaos that followed. She had seen this play out before, the powerful getting rattled when their hidden truths were exposed. But Pam wasn't just waiting for an outcome. She was preparing for the next move. She knew that this wasn't just about Judge Galloway's misconduct. It was about sending a message to anyone who thought they could act with impunity. Her legal team was already drafting the official complaint to the State Bar Association, but Pam also wanted to make sure the world saw Galloway's true colors. She sat in her office, crafting a public statement, one that would continue to put pressure on the judge and his supporters. Justice is not a game. Those who wear the robe must wear it with integrity. We will not rest until those who betray their duty face the consequences. The statement went live, and within hours, the media buzzed once again. Pam wasn't done, not by a long shot. By now, the pressure on Judge Galloway was intense. The local and national media painted him as a corrupt figure, a judge who had used his power to bully and intimidate. His once pristine reputation was being shredded before his very eyes. The State Bar Association's investigation wasn't moving as quickly as Pam would have liked, but the public opinion was already turning in her favor. Her calls for accountability had sparked a broader conversation about corruption in the judiciary. More women came forward. Several cases were reviewed. It became clear that Judge Galloway had a pattern of overstepping his bounds, not just with Pam, but with others as well. "It's over," Pam thought. She could feel the momentum building. It was only a matter of time before Galloway was held accountable for his actions. The walls were closing in on the judge, but he refused to go down without a fight. Judge Galloway, having exhausted his legal options, turned to more underhanded tactics. He started quietly reaching out to influential figures who could discredit Pam Bondi. He sent emails to key players, offering them access to dirt on Pam's career and her involvement in controversial cases. But Pam, ever vigilant, was prepared for this. She had already anticipated that Galloway would attempt to fight dirty. She had secured her own allies, top lawyers, press contacts, and even some former political rivals who owed her favors. Pam responded with a clear message: "Try me." She wasn't about to let Galloway's desperation drag her into his corrupt world. As the investigation into Judge Galloway continued, it was clear that he had few options left. The State Bar Association was moving forward with the formal charges, and it seemed like only a matter of time before his dismissal would be announced. But then, just when Galloway thought the storm might finally pass, a bombshell dropped. The FBI got involved. The evidence had been compiled. The depth of Galloway's corruption was deeper than anyone had imagined. "You're finished," one of the investigators told him during an interrogation. "We have everything we need." And for the first time, Judge Galloway knew he was truly cornered. Pam Bondi watched as the announcement came over the airwaves. Judge Galloway had been officially disbarred, and all of his cases under review would be re-examined. His career was destroyed. The media coverage hailed Pam as a hero, a tireless advocate for justice, someone who was willing to fight against even the most powerful opponents in the legal system. Her victory was sweet, but Pam knew that this was just one battle. There were still many more corrupt individuals out there, and she would continue her fight for justice for the people who couldn't fight back, and for the truth. She had sent a message loud and clear. No one is above the law. Years later, when people spoke of the downfall of Judge Galloway, they didn't just remember the scandal. They remembered Pam Bondi's courage, her refusal to back down, even when the odds were stacked against her. The case became a pivotal moment in the fight against judicial corruption and inspired a new generation of legal professionals to stand up for what was right. Pam had proven that even the most powerful could be brought to justice if the truth was allowed to speak for itself. As for Judge Galloway, he had become a cautionary tale, a reminder that no one was untouchable. And Pam Bondi had shown the world exactly how to fight back.